So when you're looking to purchase a third generation F-body, one of your major concerns should be rust. I think it's a pretty obvious thing, but rust is over an uphill battle. A little bit is manageable, but you'll always find more regardless of how little rust the car appears to have. So one of the common rust areas, similar to muscle cars of the 70s, 60s and 70s, is the wheel well arches. Typically, they'll rust around here. You'll find bubbling, pitting, maybe even parts missing in these arches, especially towards the bottom. And then something to keep in mind is these moldings along the bottom, or even these door moldings along the sides, are very good at trapping water and dirt behind them if they were removed and put on incorrectly or whatever. But you'll find rust behind these moldings and behind the trim pretty commonly. Now obviously when you're looking at a car, you can't take the car apart, but this is what you're hoping to find, a nice clean area where the trim piece used to be. You can usually kind of get underneath of it sometimes and kind of feel around, because that's another common place where dirt will collect, underneath. So if you're buying a T-top car, the T-top seals are very important. They're replaceable. They're not terribly difficult to replace, but they do get a little expensive. And depending on how long the car was kept outside with bad T-top seals, you'll start to have rust issues up in this area. Sometimes you'll even find rust along the T-top center bar itself, which again is replaceable. They make new stainless steel ones that don't rust, but they are a little harder to replace. But you'll find stuff like this where there's chunks of the car coming off with the weather stripping. At that point, that's not really salvageable. Here's the other side. There's cracks and chunks missing. Now this car sat outside for a couple months now without T-tops in it because it's a parts car, but this didn't happen in a couple months. This was years and years of neglect. When you take a T-top off, is something like this, a nice clean T-top seal. You'll see this metal piece here that supports the seal. It's mostly rust free. You'll have maybe a little bit, but a manageable amount, not pieces missing. Another good sign is a clean center bar. That's generally a good sign. And then if you have leaking T-tops, generally it can be assumed that the floor is also rusted. The water has to collect somewhere. Generally it's going to go underneath the seat, all over this floor. The floor does slope down into the back, so you'll get some rust here in the footwell. So here's something else you don't want to find when you're looking at T-top cars. So this one, the seals don't look too bad, but you look at the T-top bar, the bar itself is rusted. The center seal clearly is lifting a little bit. It'll sag the headliner and then cause damage to that rail. Now this particular car sat in the field for 10 years without a T-top, or had a leaking plastic T-top with a hole in it. So that's where a lot of that rust came from. But that also goes and damages the interior, causes mildew and mold in here. And obviously there's a hole in that passenger footwell. So another common issue with third gens in general is A-pillar rust. If you look there, up here, there's obviously rust starting to form in the A-pillar. And I'm assuming, since you can see it bubbling here, it probably goes through the A-pillar a little bit more. It's a lot worse underneath. I don't know if this is caused by cracked windshields, but I've seen it caused a lot by this windshield seal leaking. I've seen people take it out for looks, but it does serve a purpose if the silicone holding the windshield in starts to leak. The A-pillar is structural on these cars, or unibody. That is more or less your crash structure. You don't want rust there. That can be a big problem. It's not easy to fix. So another common rust area is here in the trunk, in the spare tire well. As you can see, there's a hole here. It's also not common for this piece to rust away and start flopping around like that. And it's a pretty common place where the trunk seal starts to leak for some reason, especially in T-top cars. It seems to be a lot more prevalent. But it's definitely a spot worth checking out if you're in the market for a third gen. Hopefully this video helps you guys out and gives you some direction for when you're checking third gens out. Hope this helps.